The Last of Us has always been an important story in my life. When part 1 had come out, I had made a video entitled The Selfishness of Love. In it, I came to the conclusion that I had been wrong about how I viewed myself. As someone who struggles with depression, I always thought I wasn't worthy of love and care, especially self-love. I thought that was selfish. Thanks to The Last of Us, however, I began to understand the messaging behind the story, and my focus shifted from reminding myself, it's not about me, to it's about us. That we should care for others as well as ourselves, because we are always worthy of love. But somewhere along the line, in the years since the 2013 release of the first game, it's about us warped into a new phrase, one laced with selfishness and fueled by hate. It's about us became, it's not about them. Somehow, we've reverted back to the archaic traditions of labeling each other as them instead of including them as part of us. Surely these segregationary traditions are easily understood as hateful, but for some reason, they're not. In fact, people often equate the two statements. They believe both phrases are inherently loving, that looking out for one's own in-group equates to excluding and disparaging the out-group. This idea has allowed people to perpetuate hateful rhetoric against all sorts of communities, individuals, and even characters, all in the name of what they believe to be love. Today, I am here to discuss that the love many of us believe to feel is wrong, because it's merely hate disguised as love. And the greatest example I can use is The Last of Us Part 2. When I had first played the game in 2020, I'll admit that I didn't love it, but I also didn't hate it. After finishing the game, it left me with a feeling I couldn't quite understand. There was an exhausting hopelessness after experiencing nearly 20 hours of grief and suffering. So I can relate to those who disliked the experience. It wasn't necessarily a fun time, though the gameplay was fantastic. Overall, the developers at Naughty Dog had a very specific story to tell, one that upset many people, including me, at how it handled the loss of Joel. However, I felt that I was wrong for my mixed feelings about it. On the internet, a prominent dichotomy formed about the game, one that you had to choose what side you were on. One half lauded it as a masterpiece, pushing the needle for video games as art forms, but the other half hated it profusely. Now I'm talking full-on hatred, the type that reminds you how evil humanity could be. People despised nearly everything about the game, sending death threats to actors and developers, and continuously spitting hateful rhetoric about the game as the HBO show released. From the distinct changes from the game, Bella Ramsey in general, and just blatant homophobia, racism, and transphobia, hatred has fueled the discourse about the game and the release of the show, even before it finished. Now, as I watch the show, I believe it handles so many scenes much better than the game did, though some scenes are handled way better in the game. Overall, they are two entirely different mediums telling almost the exact same story. So, just like the game, I don't love the show entirely, but there's so many aspects I do love about it. Yet some people are so eager to join the side to hate it, thinking that they are on the only right side. It's unfortunate. The idea of how damaging hatred can be is eluding so many of us. Because when people turn to hate on the story, its themes, characters, and the people involved with creating it, they believe they're doing it out of love. They wanted Joel to live. They wanted Abby to die. They wanted Bella Ramsey recasted. And they wanted their memory of a beloved franchise feel untarnished. They believe their hatred is preserving the love they once had. If you don't agree with them, then you're just wrong. If you aren't with them, you're against them. This is the classic sport teamification of our lives that has only exponentially increased in recent years. Everything from fake news, the belief in science, politics, ideologies, to even basic human rights. Everything becomes black and white, and no matter what team you end up on, you are put against the other. This so-called other doesn't view you as part of us. They view you as part of the vilified them. And it's not about them. In Prisoners of Hate, the cognitive basis of anger, hostility, and violence, published over 25 years ago in 2000 by psychiatrist Dr. Aaron T. Beck, he writes, although there are large differences in the sociological, economic, and historical causes, the final common denominator is the same. The aggressors have a positive bias regarding themselves and a negative bias toward their adversary, often conceived as the enemy. People don't need to understand who you are in order to make a decision about you. All they need to know is what side you represent, and the hate will follow. Although these individuals or groups may feel liberated from restraints against attacking the supposed adversary, such people have actually surrendered their freedom of choice, abdicated their rationality, and are now the prisoners of a primal thinking mechanism. It's crazy to me how we've become prisoners to our hatred, and how it runs many aspects of our lives now. Yet it makes perfect sense to why we have become so hateful. When we believe that we are being righteous and loving, it's easy to become manipulated into continuing down a hateful path. We are led to believe that our hate is coming from a place of love by the many leaders, politicians, and media outlets capitalizing off of that hatred. This hatred and the othering of groups as the enemy has become commonplace. Not only now, but throughout history, even allowing for horrifying events, one of which is transcendental genocide, war against certain factions to achieve political goals, such as clearing out the indigenous inhabitants of a land to make room for colonists. It is based on an ideology of hatred toward a stigmatized group within the country. We've become so rooted in this idea that attacking this so-called enemy becomes the sole solution for progress and love. This stigmatized group becomes the scapegoat for all of our problems, and we have been led to believe that our hatred is the only viable solution. Aggression against the stigmatized group is more appealing than a commitment to a positive political agenda. It is easier for the populace to blame and attack an alien group than to understand the intricacies of economic and political problems and the complexities of a positive political and economic program. It's difficult to break the cycle of hatred we've been conditioned into loving, because it has become the norm in our society. But what ends up being equally difficult to stomach is that the piece of media that stirred up so much hatred has the exact messaging arguing against hatred and advocating for breaking the cycle. And yet, people miss it. In The Last of Us Part 2, both of Ellie and Abby's primary motivations are fueled by hatred. Abby sacrifices years of her life hunting her father's murderer. She becomes enraged that her father no longer walked this earth, while the man responsible continued to live. It's perfectly natural to feel that anger, the grief of losing your loved one in horrific circumstances. Whether or not we become angry depends on whether we judge that we have been wronged or victimized. We are likely to become angry if we believe the other person was unjustified. She believes Joel to be the enemy, without the chance to understand why he made his choice. After all, in this post-apocalyptic world, it's shoot first and never ask questions. So Abby uses her hate to guide her, disguised as a noble and loving cause in honor of her father. When she finally finds Joel, She is relieved that she can finally put this hate-fueled quest behind her. But rather than executing him quickly, providing a quick death that even her father had received, she brutalized him. In an apathetic world with no due process, kindness and mercy are the only ways we can separate us from the monsters. Abby didn't grant Joel any peace. It's interesting to see the dialogue choice used in season 2 of the show. Before Abby brutally murders Joel, she tells him,
"There are just some things everyone agrees are just fucking wrong."
The hypocrisy of that statement is stark, as Abby picks up a golf club as her intended weapon. You may feel that she doesn't understand the meaning of her own words, but in fact, she believed them to be true, but only because she feels right in her hatred. The aggressors are firmly entrenched in their belief that their cause is just. Their rights have been violated. The object of their wrath, the true victim, to disinterested observers, is seen as the offender by the victimizers. Aggressive, manipulative people generally believe that their entitlements and rights override those of others. Abby was so blinded by her hatred that she didn't even know the man she passed her judgment on. She never knew his motivations, who Joel was in the past, and who he was now. All she knew was that he was the enemy and needed to be stopped. Inhibitions against killing are automatically lifted by the belief that they are doing the right thing. Evildoers must be exterminated. Then in turn, after Abby kills Joel, Ellie goes on a murderous rampage against her, sacrificing the life she had in order to enact revenge. She embodied the same blind hatred for Abby as Abby did for Joel. Both of them fueled by the idea of bringing the enemy to justice and having their father's murder be avenged, all in the name of what they believe to be love. Ellie even believes that her quest for revenge would serve as a benefit to not only Joel's memory, but to the people of Jackson, to serve as protection.
Not for me. Not even for Joel. I am asking you, please, do it for us.
This idea is voted down, causing the pair of Ellie and Dina to leave on their own. It's easy to be consumed with hatred, that to believe it's the right choice for yourself and for those around you. When people identify their own individualistic and sociophilic strivings with the goals of the group, they are subject not only to the benefits of group identification, but also to its dark side: xenophobia, chauvinism, prejudice, and intolerance. Yet on their horrifying journey, after murdering so many people, Ellie and the ones close to her learn that their pursuits ultimately end in more suffering. Ellie's greatest fear of ending up alone comes true, as the hatred isolated her. Both sides, Abby and Ellie, lose so much from their hatred. They lost what little love and care they had in this harsh and apathetic world. And most importantly, they lost the remaining connection to their fathers, all because they became prisoners to their own grief, manifested as hatred for someone they didn't truly know. Now, I don't want to get you confused. When it comes to the crimes committed throughout the series, you can make a strong case that these characters deserve to be given justice. From the actions of Abby, Ellie, and even Joel, justice can feel that it comes from a place of love. But The Last of Us shows us just how quickly our quest for justice can turn into a hateful endeavor. Especially when we label the other party, whom we know very little of, as the enemy. You can see how detrimental the labeling and othering of groups and individuals are when you examine the groups of The Last of Us. From the wolves, the scars, Fedra, and even the fireflies, each group sets themselves apart from one another. convinced that the other groups are the villains. This belief system alienates one another and makes it simple to enact violent and hateful actions towards even the most marginalized groups, especially when one believes their actions come from a place of love. A variety of external situations, economic distress, war, political propaganda, can activate these beliefs and transform the image of the vulnerable subgroup into that of the enemy. It's this idea, the labeling of enemies from ones that could be a part of us, that brings me to two individuals I don't believe get discussed together enough. Joel and Abby's father, Jerry. It's simple to go over the details that Joel had killed Jerry, that he believed Jerry to be the enemy, standing in the way between him and his daughter. You can see that his hatred was disguised as love. But I like to imagine, had Jerry gotten the chance, he would have understood why Joel chose to save Ellie. At the core of it, they both wanted their daughters to live, to be happy and safe. Neither of them would have wanted hatred to overtake their daughters' lives, since nothing brings us closer together than understanding the love we have for one another. Both fathers would not have wanted their daughters to suffer in an uncaring world. They would have done anything to protect them, to try to secure a future for them, whether that was killing dozens of fireflies or operating on a girl who could be the cure for the virus. They would have understood each other. That is what's truly missing nowadays when we examine our society. No one bothers with the explanation of one's actions and existence. They're content with hating them first and foremost. But if we took the time to care, we could understand. If Joel and Jerry would have understood one another given the chance, Abby and Ellie would have understood each other too. They both lost their fathers, their grief overwhelming them. They wanted to bring the other to justice without taking the time to understand each other. Because of this, they lose everything. This is why The Last of Us is so important and is discussed with so much passion to this day. It can serve as a cautionary tale for hatred and the way we treat those we don't understand. We can be quick with our assumptions of others, especially when so many people decided they hated The Last of Us so early on in the story. But providing time to understand and let the story and others grow is the most important form of love. Sadly, the discourse around the story misses that idea because it is rooted in hatred. Hell, I didn't like The Last of Us Part 2 for a long time, but there was one significant moment that made me understand it. The moment that the story became a masterpiece for me. One fateful night, I put on the soundtrack, attempting to drown out my anxiety at 2 a.m. The very next day, I was set to ask my girlfriend's parents for her hand in marriage, in the common archaic tradition. However, there was one glaring issue. From refusing to respond to my text messages, to consoling my girlfriend after difficult and disappointing conversations I was excluded from, they hated me. There were several aspects of my life they were concerned over. The culture I was raised in, my difficulties with depression, all boiling down to one idea. They hated who I was. But strangely, it wasn't the type of hate you'd come to expect. It was twisted with concern over their daughter's future, and felt as if it was coming from a place of love. It was frustrating because it was fueled with their preconceived notions about me, notions that they learned from all sorts of sources. Some from the people in their community, some coming from the countless movies and TV shows portraying villains, and most of them from the news. But none of them came from the source, from me. They had thought of me as the other, an enemy to keep at bay. So the idea of meeting them in person and asking for my girlfriend's hand in marriage felt like an impossible battle. The only thing that kept me sane was the repeating playlist of music from The Last of Us. In the dead of night, as my heartbeat stabilized and I kept repeating the lessons that The Last of Us had taught me, I had to remind myself that their hate was unfounded. They didn't understand me because they didn't know who I was. It's hard to come to terms with it. It feels like an impossible mountain to climb. But when presented with the opportunity, as I stood in front of them the very next day, I felt something take over, and I started talking. I commonly joke with my wife about what happened. I will tell her that I blacked out, that I don't remember what exactly I said to make them agree to being okay with us being married. The truth is that I knew exactly what I said. Not in word, but in meaning. I told them who I was, that I would love and cherish their daughter forever, because she is deserving of all the love this world has to offer. And with their blessing, I will never choose to go down a path of hatred. I will always choose love. All it took for them to stop labeling me as the enemy was to understand who I was. In that moment, and the subsequent moments after as a family, the phrase, "it's not about them," had morphed back into, "it's about us." All it takes is to understand one another, to show love and care, and to confront these feelings of anger, grief, and despair with love and not hatred. We need to remind ourselves that love can never come from a place of hatred, and vice versa. If it does, if hatred feels like the loving thing to do, then your hatred is wrong. Thank you all so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope it resonated with you. Please subscribe for more videos, and feel free to check out the description for information about the book, my Patreon, and my second channel. Thank you all, and I hope you all have a lovely day.